All right, looks like we're live on YouTube. Exciting times. There might be a slight delay on the YouTube feed, which is fine. Okay, I want to welcome everyone and great to have you here. You are encouraged to go on camera if you like, but that's not required. Uh, you can choose if you want to do that or not. And it's great to have everyone here. I want to thank you for showing up for this somewhat spontaneous live event. Kind of somewhat last minute, gave a little bit of notice. I wanted to do this for a couple of reasons. First of all, I wanted to test this new setup because we've never done a Zoom meeting where you guys can participate, but we're also live on social media. So I wanted to take advantage of that because we're going to do some workshops coming up in a slightly different format. Whereas in the past, the workshops were only on Zoom and we were never live. We're going to probably start doing some new workshops where well, I shouldn't say probably. If this goes well, we're definitely going to do some workshops. We're going to be live on social media. So if even folks who are not here in the Zoom meeting can still benefit from that. And we can kind of grow our audience that way. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do this way. The other is I just want to take advantage of this. I wanted to take this opportunity to kind of share with you guys a few things. So I'll probably spend the first 15 minutes or so of the meeting, give or take, to go through a realignment, kind of reintroducing the Freedom Studio, which is a rebranding of our original brand, talk a little bit about the updated vision, what has changed, where I see us going forward from here. I also want to talk about some of our strategic partnerships, and I also want to talk about some of the new services and new memberships that we've launched. So I'll do that in the beginning, and then we'll just take the rest of the time for Q&A based on that. So before I do that, I'm going to drop a link here in the chat, which is all of our links. So if you're not sure where to get started, if you're not sure what to look at first, this link that I'm about to share in the chat is going to help you with that. And you can use that as your starting point. Awesome. So yeah, so let me share a little bit about what has changed. I know we even have some folks that probably been with us since way back when. This project started in April of last year, so going on about 9 months. And some of you guys were saying, well, what the heck happened? Didn't you used to be called conditionalacceptance.com? What happened, David? What is going on here? So some of you guys, of course, already know what has transpired, but I want to share that with you now. So briefly, just to recap, um, I began studying natural law very earnestly in 2021. And then a few years after that, in 23, is when I started getting exposed to financial sovereignty. So public versus private, negotiable instruments, private banking, and then later equity, trusts, conditional acceptance, all these things. So I found, and you may have found this for yourself, and I think this happens to a lot of us, is when we first discover that there is no money and things are operating very differently than the way we thought, there is a tendency to kind of be seduced into even a belief that, oh, if that's the case, then there must be a push button remedy waiting for me. There must be a really easy way for me to either extricate myself or cash out of the system, as it were, and just kind of get that quick fix, that lottery ticket or, the casino, what's it called? The slot machine that just kind of cashes out. Now, I'm not saying that that could never happen, but I can tell you that as a student of natural law, I know that there is no such thing as something for nothing in life. And all the most valuable things in life, there's always going to be a price. So that kind of got me thinking. And as I continued my study, and I was seduced a lot by that too. And in the beginning, I even thought, oh, there must be a really quick way out of this. And I very quickly discovered that that was not the case. And I think what I had going for me is a certain resilience and a certain willingness to keep studying, keep exploring, keep trying to figure it out, keep moving forward, and keep putting the pieces together and not ever give up, but also be willing to say, okay, well, maybe what I thought was the solution is not. And who I thought had the answers, maybe they don't have the answers, right? Because we're also learning from others. And sometimes you're going to encounter people that they have good ideas, and sometimes they may have some answers, but sometimes again, you may be seduced into thinking they're going to give you an easy answer, and that's not the case. Now, I do want to say, just with regards to conditional acceptance is still, even though we've moved away from that name, conditional acceptance itself is still a very powerful tool, and it has a very certain place in terms of our remedy. It's a little bit differently positioned than what I originally thought. It turns out that conditional acceptance is great when, for example, you're dealing with issues like eminent domain, or you're dealing with issues where someone is trying to recontract with you with your employment agreement and requiring you to inject certain substances into your body in order to continue with a contract that you already have in place. Okay, so these are great examples. These are just two of many examples where conditional acceptance is going to be really great. However, it turns out that when it comes to discharging on public debts, it's not really the best tool. There are much better solutions, there are much simpler solutions, and there are alternatives. So that was one of the reasons why we decided to pivot. But there's an even deeper level to this, and that is that the real remedy itself is not just about discharging public debts. Because if that were all it were, then we could just focus on that 100%. But then we can see from our experience that even with tools like equity, which always have a remedy, even there, you're not going to get it 100% of the time. And, we're going to easily get pulled into these scenarios where we're struggling and struggling to try to get a remedy when in fact we could be working with a much higher level strategy. Okay. And what I really want to avoid doing, there's something I want to do and something I want to avoid doing. What I want to avoid doing is trying to teach things that are not going to work or not work consistently. Okay. What I want to do is put together a strategy that's going to be a winning strategy that's based on proven processes. It may take a little longer to get it done, but it's going to set you up and set all of us up for long-term success. And that's why I decided those are some of the reasons why I decided to pivot. And now we are the Freedom Studio, which is a much more broader scope. Okay. So the principles are very simple. We want to learn to live privately, live in the private, operate privately, conduct commerce privately, or at least at an arm's length from the public side, and create that separation. And we, of course, want to be able to discharge because we have, if we can take advantage of that privilege, why would we not want to do it? But we want to do it in a way where we don't have to struggle just to discharge. We want it to be actually something that is granted, that there's an agreement, that we can all get it done because all the parties involved are in full agreement that, hey, that's how we're operating. Okay. But again, to make that happen, certain things have to be put in place. And this is where, we may lose some people in this audience, but I'm okay with that. The people that are not going to stick around are the ones that are looking for the absolute quick fix, the ones that want it handed to them, on a silver platter, and are going to be very indignant about that. And I'm not bad mouthing anyone, but after having done more than 100 consultations, I can tell you that I've met with people who have that mindset, and it's very hard to break through that. And in some cases, I was not successful in conveying to them that if they took a more strategic approach, then they were going to have much more success and they were going to set themselves up for much long-term success. Okay. Having said that, I also get it that sometimes people are specifically in a financial bind, and that's part of the reason why they're looking for a remedy is because, hey, I've got my back up against the wall and I get it, and I feel for you. And hey, I've been there. I've been broke and more than once, and I know that it's not a pleasant feeling. And I've had my back up against the wall too. But there was something I learned from that experience of being broke even more than once is that no one's coming to save you. You can only save yourself. And the good news is there's always a way out if you're willing to walk that path. So I had to figure that out for myself. And now that's what I'm trying to convey to everyone here. And I want not just convey to you, but actually walk that path with you. Okay, so if you guys haven't noticed, this is pretty much all I do. I show up every day. There's nothing else. I mean, I do have a couple of other businesses that I'm conducting. There's different lines of business, but this is pretty much all I do. I'm pretty much in it for life. I'm not going anywhere. So essentially, I am making and have made a lifetime commitment to be here and to help you and everyone who wants to go, join us on this journey, that we're gonna make this happen. Okay, but it's going to be based on strategy. Okay, so think of what's going on in the commercial realm and in the public as a big game. It's a big show. Every time you see those actors on the stage, and they are actors, and they act, some of them are very good at acting. Okay, they're very convincing. It's theater. Okay, all the world's a stage. Okay, remember that famous statement from Shakespeare. So true. Okay. So now instead of being swept up by the theater, we can be somewhat captivated by it because, hey, it is theater. But now we can separate ourselves. And in terms of playing the game, we can learn to play the game at a higher level where now we can emerge winning. Okay. Versus trying to control the game or change the rules of the game, which we're not going to be able to do necessarily. I mean, it can happen over time, but it's not going to happen in a week, in a day or in a week based on some tactical change. It's going to happen over a longer period of time and with more of us acting. Okay. So the question you're probably asking is, that sounds great, David, but what is this high level strategy? What is the overall approach that we are taking? Okay. And the answer is in the link that I share with you. And we actually call it our high level strategy. Okay. And I'll just summarize it here. I'm not going to read the entire document, but I'll just summarize it for you so you can have the clear talking points. And then when you guys come into the Q&A, you can start to ask your specific questions. Okay. So the high level strategy is we want to move to separating ourselves from the public side and start operating in the private. Okay. So that is your status correction. That's your secured party creditor. Okay. That's your paperwork. And then right after that, it's where you start to set up your private trusts and possibly your private member associations or private associations of different types to operate in commerce. Okay. And it's also now where you're building up your business or your business trust credit. And, I was involved in business credit, just a quick aside, 7 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, I was already involved in that because I was working with influencers and coaches and mentors, 6 or 7 years ago that were already teaching these strategies. So these strategies are nothing new. Okay. But they're there to be tapped in. And the beautiful thing about business credit is it's completely separate from your personal credit. Okay. Not that we can't leverage personal credit, but we're moving away from that. All right. So, and you can build up business credit with a trust, with a business trust, or with a corporation. Okay. So you have that choice. And now we put all those pieces together with our banking relationships. And obviously I'm describing this in a very overarching way. It's not something you're going to get done in a day or a week. But now you're putting all these pieces together and you're starting to do your discharges through your trust, through your business entities. And now you're off to the races. And now you're rocking and rolling. Okay. And we're just going to help you keep moving forward. Okay. So that's the remedy. So what that means is we're going to stop fighting with the public side. Okay. We're not, this is a very non-controversial approach. We're not about creating controversy. We're not embracing the idea of we've got to sue. I know some folks, I'm not going to name any names, but I know some folks are all about, we got to just file lawsuits. We got to do it that way. Okay. Now that may work for some people. but that's not the approach we take. We are removing all the controversy. Okay. And there is no need for any controversy. We're staying in honor. And everything we're going to do is going to be based on mutual consent and agreement. Okay. Because when you have mutual consent and agreement through your communication, through your relationships, everything's going to go better. Everything's going to run smoother. Doors are going to start to open for you. You're going to find amazing benefits out of that. And you're going to probably enjoy everything much more while you're gaining that benefit. And you don't have to give up anything because you're not ceding any rights in order to gain a privilege. Okay, that's very important. I want to say that one more time. You're not going to have to cede any of your rights to gain a privilege. I think that one of the biggest benefits of this new strategy versus the older approach, where you're trying to basically, okay, I've got all these privileges on the public side, but I have to be the U.S. citizen in the case of the U.S., or I have to be, I have to act like the corporate, as the surety for the public side, and there's no real separation. Well, that doesn't sound like a winning strategy to me. I don't know how you feel about it, but that's not the approach. Now, the beautiful thing about all this is it also opens up a whole new realm of opportunities. For example, as you guys have noticed, we are going really, really hard on trusts. Trusts are an integral part of this. Setting up your private, irrevocable business trusts, and we use the term business trust because that's the model, whether we're talking about protecting your assets like your home or vehicles, or financial instruments or family documents, or now moving to the business side, your intellectual property, the operation of your businesses, your different lines of businesses, your investments. Okay, whatever it is, it's all about the trusts. Now, the thing about trust, to have proper trust, we need trustees. And to really have a proper trust, you also need to have more than one trustee. Okay, and you may or may not use family members, but I am predicting that there is going to be an explosion of demand for trustees. That is my prediction. I've already predicted that. That's not something I'm going to just mention today, but I'm kind of emphasizing it. There is going to be an explosion of demand for trustees. And acting as a trustee is a very important role, because acting in a fiduciary capacity means that it doesn't mean you have to know how to do everything, because trusts can still hire non-trustees to fulfill certain duties, okay? But you have to, as a trustee, you have to have a very strong sense of the ethics of operating a trust. You have to have the beneficiary's best interest in heart. You have to yourself be very trustworthy, and you have to just generally be knowledgeable and maybe specifically about how to operate a trust. So I want the Freedom Studio to be a vanguard in leading the charge to helping bring in a whole new segment and helping to educate you and anybody who wants to be a trustee. And not only that, trustees can and should be compensated fairly for your work. So you can actually think about this. You could become a trustee professionally. Okay, you could work professionally as a trustee. You can offer your services fractionally, or you could even work for a trust management company, something that we will be launching. And there are trust management companies already, but we will be specifically launching a trust management company. Okay, so part of my big vision for 2025 is I want to lead the charge for helping to nurture, educate, foster, and cultivate as many high value, high caliber, high quality trustees as possible, so that you who want to be trustees can step into that role. And those of you in network who will require trustees can find trustworthy individuals or entities, trust management companies, for example, to help you manage your trusts. So I see that demand just growing and growing and growing. So if you want to ride that wave, you're going to want to get involved. And one of the best ways to do that is to join our trustee network. Okay. Or you could join if you're already a sovereign member, you're going to have access to some of those courses as well through the sovereign membership. So either way, either as a sovereign member or through the trustee network, you're going to be able to gain access to that. And we're going to be meeting weekly. We're going to help you set up your own trusts, and we're going to be cultivating and fostering your specific skills as a trustee. Okay, so you heard it here first. The explosion of trustees, and I want to help you guys step into that role for those of you who have a desire to do that. And I'm very enthusiastic about this, and I'm very committed. And this is going to be one of the biggest things we're going to focus on in 2025. So keep an eye on that. Express your interests. Get involved as much as you want. Okay. Now, just to wrap up the announcements, because I know you guys want to get to the Q&A part, I'll just mention that we are focusing very heavily on our strategic partnerships. So I want to give a special shout out to Kathleen Acker Ramsey, who is one of our strategic partners. She's focused mainly on conditional acceptance, on trust, but even more strongly on PMAs. Her core educational materials on teaching you how to create private member associations or private member assemblies, or just private associations in general, which are not exactly the same as a trust, but they are powerful private entities that allow you to operate privately in commerce. In fact, in some ways, even more privately than a trust, because even your members are your client, your customers, if they are members, are going to be on the private as well. So we're going to be doing a lot of education around that. Her materials are already available to all of you, but we're going to be bringing her in even more, her education even more tightly into the Freedom Studio. So you're going to want to keep an eye on that. I'm also very happy to announce our latest partnership with Josh Van Horn of Get Business Credit. Josh has really made a name for himself in the space of business credit, especially creating business credit without a personal guarantee. In other words, without using the Social Security number, which is, again, a core part of our mission. We want to move away from conducting commerce with the Social Security person. So, of course, you want to be able to build business credit without personal guarantee if that's beneficial. Again, you can still use a PG if you feel like that's going to give you a tactical advantage, and then quickly pivot. But if your personal credit is in the dumps, or you just don't want to use it, through Josh's help, we're going to be able to help you do that. And we're going to be rolling out very soon a private course just for our members that Josh is actually creating. So it's going to be an integrated course that he's going to create that's going to help you guys grow your credit. Because if you want to be able to tender negotiable instruments through your business trust and through your businesses, you're going to also need to pay attention to your business credit. It's going to be part and parcel with that. And even before you have that ability, if you can get access to a lot of business credit, that's going to give you a lot of leverage. And that is essentially, credits that are out there waiting to be grabbed. So I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. While those guys over there are wasting their time trying to manipulate treasury forms and not getting anywhere because literally no one's getting any results, you're going to be over here on the winning team working on your business credit, standing on the rock of your paperwork, standing on the rock of equity, and then you're going to be able to properly discharge, and it's all going to be authorized. So you're already on the winning team just by being here. Okay, so stop wasting your time looking for the get rich quick scheme, because it ain't going to happen. Okay, I haven't seen evidence of it. Have you? I haven't. But I have seen evidence of a lot of successes with the strategy that I didn't create, but I've adopted here. Okay, so I could go on and on. There's other great announcements. There's a lot of great stuff going on. But I think I'm just going to leave it at that, because otherwise I'm going to consume the whole meeting with announcements. What I'd rather do is switch to the Q&A format. Remember, we are live on YouTube. Let me just double check that. I'm not really monitoring it, but yep, we are still live there. So we're going to just do this the same way we do all of our sessions. You can raise your Zoom hand if you want to ask a question or share an anecdote. Remember, you're speaking to a very large audience, not just the people in the room here. So always make your questions as relevant as possible. I also encourage you, don't get lost too much in the weeds. Focus on the high level of what you're trying to accomplish. And we're going to definitely help you do that. So having said that, I see that Anna Maria was the brave one to raise her hand first. So let's go to Anna Maria. What you got?
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, David, for the opportunity. Just want to make something clear. Not going to take too much of your time. Just want to make sure that within the sovereign membership, we also have access to the trustee network.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have access to the entire trustee network, but you do have access to the courses that allow you to create trusts and to learn how to become a trustee. I think the only thing you don't have is the actual trustee network meetings and that process.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You got it. You got it. Great clarification. Who else has a question? And I'm going to also keep an eye on the chat here, just in case somebody. So Rick C says, since I first became a member, I have really seen you grow and progress in all of this. Well, thanks, Rick. I appreciate that recognition. I feel the same way. I feel like we've come a long way and we can go a long way. So, but I definitely appreciate that recognition. So thank you for that. And let's go to Veronica. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Hey, David.
Hey, Veronica.
What I was wanting to know when it comes down to the irrevocable business trust, when you're setting that up, is there anything in there where you can set it up for your children as well, as far as them being involved in it?
Yeah, how would you like your children to be involved? Are you thinking of having them as beneficiaries? Do you want them to be involved, in operating the trust? I mean, what's the purpose of the trust? Because again, even though it's a business trust, these trusts can serve different purposes. So that would be my first question. What's the purpose of this trust that you're talking about?
Okay. My son is wanting to go into business, right? And he's been looking into putting his business under a trust, right? So he hasn't had any children yet. So he's not wanting to go into something to where he can't put his, set it up to where his children can benefit from it. Does that make sense? So you understand what I'm saying?
I do. However, when it comes to, let me just clarify, when it comes to setting up these business trusts, you don't automatically have to make children or family members the beneficiaries. You can make a PMA a beneficiary. You can make another trust the beneficiary. Okay. You can also assign beneficial interest to your children, but not necessarily disperse at any given time, depending on how you set up the trust. So you have a lot of flexibility. You have an infinite ability to set up the trust, almost infinite ways to set it up. So at a high level, if your son is interested in operating privately with his business, which is a great idea.
Yeah, he's wanting to go sovereign. He's wanting to do with the whole 9 yards. But he hasn't begun to have children. And what he's doing is he's trying to get his financial foundation laid out, then pursue his wife, and he wants to get children right away, right? But he wants to have something in place for the children to benefit off of.
Okay,
And
there's
so,
a couple different ways to set it up. I mean, what I would
yes,
recommend is invite him to join the trustee network and we can kind of sit down and workshop that. But there are ways to set it up so that even if he doesn't have children yet, when the children come in the future, for example, we
right.
can already have a structure in place so they can benefit from it through some kind of trust fund that's basically earmarked for that.
Okay. See, he was thinking that there was no way that that would be possible. I said, hold
Oh,
on,
no,
son.
that's not true.
I
I
said,
don't
son,
know. I
hold
don't know where he
on.
got that
Let
recommendation
me
from.
let me look into it, Gator. Hold on. Let me look into it because I got something coming up. So let me see what's going on with that, and then I'll get back with you. Because he's talking about
Sure.
having a football team for children, okay?
Yeah, but absolutely, Veronica. But I just wanted to emphasize that it is absolutely untrue that he would have to, a priori name, offspring as beneficiaries in order to start setting up those business trusts. So I just wanted to clarify that that's not a prerequisite. All right, great. Great clarification. Let's go to Antoinette.
Hey, David, how's it going?
It's going great, Antoinette. It's great to see you here. You've been with us for quite a while, right?
Oh, you know it. And I'm here to the end of time.
Awesome.
Listen, I ended up getting on late because I didn't know the password. So somebody put the password in the chat for me. But I don't know if you cover this or not with the trust network. I just want to know a little bit more about the trust network, what all entails, because I plan on, I know you say you meet every Monday. I plan on getting in before Monday.
Awesome. Yeah, great question. So the way the trustee network is our most recent private membership. It is separate from the existing memberships. I mean, you can always add it on. We just launched it this month. Who is the trustee network for? It's really for anybody who wants to learn to set up their private trust to operate, either to protect assets and or operate in commerce privately. So multi-purpose. And it's for folks who want to either find others to hire them as trustees or hire trust management services, or who want themselves to learn how to be a trustee and offer their services. So you can see there's a couple of different angles, but it's all centered on mastery of the business trust. And we basically, there are a couple of different variations of the business trust. We're using basically a Massachusetts type business trust. It's an extremely flexible model, meaning it gives the trustees almost unlimited power, like it gives them broad powers within the scope of the trust. And you can be very specific. And it's going to work for all these situations, whether you want to protect your assets or you want to conduct commerce, privately, or manage your public side from the private.
Okay.
So it's going to give you, it's going to be powerful. And Antoinette, we're going to meet every single Monday. So every single week at 5 o'clock Eastern, we meet every single week. Of course, just like all of our memberships, we save all the replays. So if you miss a meeting, and we're going to have special guests. We already had Kathleen, who I mentioned earlier, as a special guest. I'm sure she's going to come back. And we're going to have other special guests who are going to help to augment and add to what we're learning in the trustee network. So keep an eye on that one. And if you decide to join, it would be fantastic to have you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dave.
You got it. And
Okay.
let's go to Rick Z.
Howdy.
Howdy, Rick.
Like I said before, I have my private unregistered common law trusts for 5+ years now. I have the taxes come in the name of the trust, the electric bill, gas bill, water bill, all in the name of the trust. So what I'm working on now, then the next step is correcting my status. Now that should be kind of like the next step before I can start offsetting these bills and everything, taxes.
Yeah, so at a high level, Rick, and for anybody who's listening, foundational paperwork is very important. Okay. And the beautiful thing about it is it's usually something you only have to do once. I just actually finished my paperwork, so I'm very pleased about that. Sometimes in rare cases, you may go back and either supplement or modify your papers, but generally you don't have to do that. So you can kind of look at it as a one-time foundational process where you are basically separating yourself, you're documenting and registering on the public side, you're giving notice of your separation from the public side, and through your SPC, you're gaining control of your negotiable instruments. And those two combined are what give you the power and the confidence and what gives the bank confidence to give you that ability to tender negotiable instruments, because they see that you're private and that you have essentially $100 million bond that you can write negotiable instruments against. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So I would say for anybody who hasn't done that, make it a top priority. We don't, at the Freedom Studio, we don't have an in-house status correction and SPC. So what we've done instead is we've partnered with a few organizations that offer that, and you can find links in the high-level strategy. Or there's a lot of providers out there that we haven't necessarily partnered with, but they have decent approaches. It's just a matter of, whose paperwork, whose process do you want to align with?
Yeah, I got mine from Divine Trust.
Fantastic.
She seems quite knowledgeable on a lot of this stuff.
Yep. So Divine Trust Babies, we actually did an interview on the YouTube channel a couple of months ago. I think it was in November. She's got great programs. And there are links to her services in our high level strategy. So, she's a strategic partner of the Freedom Studio. So yes, and I would say, Rick, as you go through that process, I and those of us in network would love to hear about your experience. So keep us updated.
All right. That's all I have for now.
Awesome, Rick. Good stuff. Okay, let me just check in the chat since there isn't someone raising their hands. Let's see if anybody has any questions. Someone asked about the order of things, I think, if I interpreted the question correctly. I mean, look, obviously, if you can do your foundational paperwork on the front end, meaning your status correction, your SBC, that's going to set you up for a lifetime of success. But you don't necessarily have to have done that in order to set up a private irrevocable business trust. So you can kind of do those things in parallel. So, but I also don't want you to rush to kind of, oh, I've got to set up my trust, and this, especially if you're creating irrevocable trusts. So take a minute. Irrevocable, what does that mean? Write in the chat, what does it mean, irrevocable? What and why is that important? What makes a trust irrevocable, and what is the consequence of that? So a quick pop quiz here. Cannot be touched. Be a little more specific. I mean, you're on the right track. Okay, can't be revoked. So who can't revoke it, and what does that mean? Okay, we need to be a little more specific. So you guys are giving good answers, but what it means is, okay, so when we set up a private irrevocable trust, one of the roles that you have is called the grantor, which sometimes is also called the creator or the exchanger or the settlor or the trustor. Okay, Trustor. So there's a couple of different names. I tend to call it either a grantor or a creator. Okay, and they are the ones that initially grant some specific property into the trust in order to establish the trust. And that property becomes the assets of the trust, which are going to be managed by the trustees for the benefit of the beneficiaries. That's a little bit of a simplification, okay? But when a trust is irrevocable, that means there are no takebacks. The grantor, which many times may not be the trustee. I mean, there is sometimes going to be an overlap, but the grantor can't take it back. Okay, and this is very important because if the trust is revocable, if there is a legal issue and that something ends up and it ends up in court, because the trust was revocable, the judge can actually revoke it in order to satisfy whatever the claim is. But if it's irrevocable, it's much more difficult to do that. In fact, it's much more difficult to penetrate or pierce the trust. So in general, on this platform, I'm not saying we would never use a revocable trust, but for the most part, we're going to use irrevocable trust, and that's going to provide a much higher level of protection. Now, sometimes people get a little nervous and say, well, if a trust is irrevocable, that sounds pretty inflexible. Well, no. The reason why it's not necessarily inflexible is the trustees can have very broad powers within the trust to contract with third parties, to buy and sell assets, to make investments, to either hold on to or disperse funds for the beneficial interest. So it's not necessarily painting you into a corner. You have very broad powers, and obviously, if you're operating a business under a trust, you want to have that level of flexibility. Okay, so don't be afraid of the idea of an irrevocable trust. It's going to give you much more protection from the public side than if you do a revocable trust. So that's a great question. Let me see what you guys are writing there. So lawyers don't get involved with private irrevocable business trust because if a lawyer is helping set it up, it's a statutory trust. Okay, so we are all learning how to be attorneys in fact. So comment in the chat, what is the difference between a lawyer and an attorney in fact? Okay. Haley, they are prostitutes and we are not. Well, yeah, I mean, their loyalty is to the court and to the public side, right? Not to you. And I've heard a lot of horror stories, not to bash lawyers, but and some of them probably don't even realize what's going on. I'm sure many of them do. So, but basically, attorney at law. So a synonym for the word at is near. So if you just, every time you hear the words attorney at law, just interpret in your mind to attorney near the law. So why would you want to hire somebody who's near the law rather than in the law? Okay. So when you're an attorney in fact, you don't need any kind of public license. You don't need to be registered with any bar association. It just means that you are learning to be competent in matters of law. Okay, you're learning to be competent in matters of law, and there are different jurisdictions. So you could be competent in matters of equity. You could be competent in matters of common law. You could be competent in commercial law or in all of those. Okay, and then you would be considered an attorney in fact. Now you can be an attorney in fact just by being in charge of your own affairs. But obviously, just like being a good trustee or in general, the more you study, the better you're going to be at managing your own affairs. Okay, so that's the main difference. All right, any other raised hands here? Let me see what people are saying in the chat. I have to scroll back a little bit. Could you explain the difference between a charitable trust? Well, again, you could take the same model that we're using. I call it a model. You could also call it a template and use it for different purposes. So the model is a Massachusetts type unincorporated business organization trust or a common law trust or non-statutory trust. But you could take that same model and use it for different purposes. In fact, you could have a business trust that has the right to donate, to contribute to charity from some of the profits that the business conducts. Okay, so it could be a multi-purpose trust. So you're not locked into just one type of entity. Okay, and that can have certain tax advantages because even though trusts are operating in the private, they are still subject to taxation. Okay, so that's a very important point. Whereas a private member association is completely tax exempt. So that's a whole different level. Scrolling back here to see what you guys have asked. Anyone with questions? Anybody brave enough to raise your hand here? Rita says Divine Queen 777. That's Divine Trust Babies. That's their organization. Provides awesome information. Yeah, I agree. I agree. They've been working on that for a long time, longer than I have. And yep, they've developed some really great material. Someone asked, do you have to do a UCC to do a trust? No, you do not. But obviously, when you do your status correction, your SBC, one of those steps is going to be to basically give notice of your security interest in your debtor. So you're going to do that, but you don't necessarily have to have done that in order to set up a private irrevocable trust. Let's go to Matt. Matt, what's up? Matt, you'll have to unmute yourself. Okay, maybe Matt got cold feet.
Okay, test. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, David. Hey, thanks for this. As far as the trust, are you setting these up under a foreign status?
No. I mean, you might, in some cases, you might set up foreign trusts. And, I and my team, we will probably at some point set up some foreign trusts. For example, I'm right now here in Colombia, in the country of Colombia, not in Colombia, the city. And we may end up setting up some foreign trusts either here or in other jurisdictions. But you don't have to do that. And most of your trusts, for simplicity, are going to be domestic.
Are they incorporating the social?
No.
Okay. So they're domestic trusts. Can you explain that? If it's domestic, how do we set that up without using our social?
You ask the IRS or whatever country you're in, you ask the local tax authority to generate a tax ID number. In the US, it's called an EIN, or an employer ID number. And that's the same number where you're going to build your business credit as part of the overall strategy.
When they ask for the responsible party, in the past, I've given them my name, upper and lowercase, tried to do that, but they explained that it doesn't matter because their system does not recognize lowercase. And he said if the name that we give them has ever been assigned a social, then we have to include the social with that name. So because it really is their name as their property until we claim it back. If we are listing ourselves as the responsible party, or do we list another entity as a responsible party? How do we avoid entering the social?
You don't, because when you have an EIN number, you've created a whole new credit profile that's separate from your social.
Right, but when they ask for the responsible party, if I give them my name, then they also demand that we give them the social for that responsible party.
Yeah, then you do that. Or if you don't want to do that, you find a foreign, and you would have to create a foreign EIN, or I guess use a foreign trustee if you can, but that's not really necessary, because we don't have to be afraid of using the social in that context, because you're not using the credit of the social security number in that case. You're just following their administrative process. They're going to generate a whole new EIN, which is completely separate from you.
Right. My understanding though is that the credits, the CP 575 credits, do come from the social and the birth certificate number. We still have to be the surety for this entity if we use.
Not if you've done your secured party creditor process, then you're just writing instruments against your bond.
Okay. So if we've got the bond in place, then we can go ahead and use the social, and it'll link to that. They'll still see us as basically sovereign. That trust will follow along with our sovereign status.
Yeah, a trust is an artificial entity that's private. And trusts have almost the same rights that you and I do. Okay.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Regardless of who sets it up. So regardless if it's you or if it's a foreign trustee, the trust itself is still going to be private. It's still going to have its own credit profile that's going to be completely separate from you.
Right. Well, except that it is tied to the social, and we have to be the surety for that entity in some way, whoever that responsible party is. If we give a social, then something is either going to be our birth certificate bond that they have still control of, or it's going to be our SPC bond. But I was wondering if there's a way to do this.
If you're writing negotiable instruments, but just for the EIN itself, it's completely separate. I'll give you an example. I had established businesses in the past that failed, and no one's coming after me for, as the surety, even though I set up those businesses. Right.
That's on the public side. I guess I'm looking more at the back end on the IRS database, how they're doing it on their books. Because it's coming. If we put our social in there, then we're underwriting it on the private side, I guess.
Okay. So what is it exactly you want to accomplish?
I would rather, I'm not saying I would rather, I guess I'm trying to understand which is the best way to go. I was trying to avoid using the social at all, because ultimately I want to exit the system completely and be free of that, and then be a private, have my claim against those credits, from the birth certificate bond and the securities account for that. Use those credits to now create a new account in place of the social, and then use a new status. That's a whole other.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a way when you file the SS4, I'm sure there's a way to use a non-US person in some cases to, as the responsible party. It's just, I personally have not done that, and I have not seen it come up as an issue for me personally, but that doesn't mean it's not possible.
Okay, besides, if we just go with the domestic, then give us some examples of what has been accomplished so far with the trust. What benefit have you seen it in your own experience?
That's too broad a question, Matt. You're going to have to narrow that down.
Okay. Can you give us any kind of example? I mean, what kind of real life experience have you had with using the trust that we're using, like the Massachusetts Business Trust model that we're incorporating here? Can you give us some real world examples of how it's been used for either generating credits, for borrowing money in the system, protecting assets?
So I'm gonna have to rely a lot on my mentors and colleagues in my peer group, many of whom are ahead of me on that process. But what some of them have told me is that they, after having done their status correction and their SPC, establishing business credit, establishing a banking relationship, they get to a point where the bank will allow them up to a certain point to discharge their business obligations by going to the bank and tendering a negotiable instrument of a certain value, which they can then use to pay their business obligations. This is the main strategy that I've learned from my mentors. Okay.
Okay, great. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yep. And then the beautiful thing about that is you're dealing with one financial institution, or maybe just one or two. Instead, because the way people are trying to do discharge, and by the way, you can still discharge on the public side directly. Okay. It's just, it's going to be more of a challenge. And you're going to have to deal with each entity separately. Okay. And it's all attached to the Social Security. So it's all, the liability is still coming back to you every time. But
directly, right.
If you have all of the, let's say you set up your trusts, your constellation of trusts. So you have your home in a trust. And maybe you even set it up, for example, so that living in your home is now a benefit that's conferred on you or on your family as beneficiaries, or as kind of a benefit of the business trust that you're operating. Okay. So now the business trust is basically paying the mortgage, owns the mortgage, and you're just benefiting from it. And because it's now an expense of the business trust, when you're able to discharge, now you can pay the mortgage that way, but you're not discharging through the mortgage lender or lender bank. You're discharging through the bank where you do your business banking.
That nails it right there. You summed it up. I guess that ties together everything for me. That's my goal, what you said right there.
Yeah. So
all right, great.
Awesome, Matt. So yeah, once you do your status correction, SPC, which obviously is what is going to allow you to write those negotiable instruments against that bond, business relationship, a relationship with the bank, decent business credit, maybe, showing some cash flow, showing that the business is viable. You put all those pieces together. It's like a recipe. You put all those ingredients together, and the result of that, plus the relationship. I always say the relationship is very important. It's usually the last step in that process. When you have everything in order, the relationship where you have the confidence, the cojones to go ask the banker to give you that ability, but you have to have done all the other things before that. And you have to walk in there confident you're not asking them to do something that you don't have a right to do, or that can't be conferred upon you.
Right. And if we've got the SPC bond in place already, are you going to help us with that know-how to write the documents to access that bond?
Yeah, well, the bank has to explain to you how they do it, because every bank's a little different. What we are going to help you with is obviously setting up your trusts, getting everything structured, setting up your banking for your trusts, and then how to approach that conversation with a banker, like the relationship side. I can help you navigate that, because I'm pretty good at, I feel like, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I feel like I'm good at relationships, negotiation, communication, and I can kind of explain to you how to do that and what not to say, because more often it's what you don't say. And you're not being deceptive. You're just, you're not being a blabbermouth about it. Okay. You're kind of holding back a little bit, but it's kind of what you say and how you say it that opens the door, because you want to show the bankers that you know what you're talking about. That what you're asking for is very reasonable. You're not trying to be abusive of any system. You're just trying to basically take advantage of something that you have. You can take advantage of.
Great. Hey, thank you, David.
Awesome. Great questions. Let's go to Todd Brockman. Todd, do
Hi.
I have permission to use your copyrighted name?
Yeah, sure. No problem. Nice to meet you virtually. One of my questions is, how do you integrate a PMA into a U-bot? That's the first question.
Okay. Well, my knowledge of PMAs, I'm actually just enrolled in Kathleen's course, so I'm still learning that myself. I don't believe you integrated into it. I think that you have a relationship between the entities. So the way I understand is, for example, a PMA could be a beneficiary of a trust, for example.
Okay.
But I'm again, my knowledge is somewhat nascent. So if Kathleen were here, I would defer to her. Since she's not, we'll just have to wait until the next time that we have a workshop with her, which is coming up. I forgot to mention that Kathleen and I are going to be scheduling in the next couple of weeks a live workshop on Telegram where she's going to be able to answer that and even more specific questions about PMAs.
And then the second question is, so in your, I downloaded the template for the U-bot that you provided everybody. And so I noticed that there was an administrator and then the trustee and co-trustee. So does the administrator act as like a protector trustee would? Is that
Yeah, it's like yeah. So it could also be thought of as a trust protector. It is an optional role. You don't have to include it in every trust, and some people won't. And some people are very pure about it. I was reading some literature that said the trust protector should really only have the right to fire trustees for cause or remove them for cause and nothing else. So you could give them broad or very narrow powers. If you're going to run a trust management company, you're going to definitely want a trust protector.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing is that Creditor Academy uses U-bots exclusively for all of their private banking stuff. So if anyone has any questions about where U-bots are being used, you might want to head over to Creditor Academy with Paul Michael. He's very involved with the private
Yeah,
bank.
he's also using PMAs now as well. So he's kind of broadening the scope as well.
Yeah, he is he's all over the map. Well, that
Could
concludes my
be.
questions. Thank you for now.
Awesome, Todd. It's great to have you and keep up the good work. Let's go back to Antoinette. Antoinette, what you got for us?
Oh, okay. Question. Someone was, I had wrote some notes last week. Somebody was talking about a trust. They were saying that we can add a master trust, which holds our other trusts. And we don't have to use EIN, and it operates in the commerce. You know about that?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to set it up. So if you don't get an EIN for a trust, that probably means it's not going to have a bank account.
Okay.
It could be a trust that, for example, is holding intellectual property. The only question I would have then is if that trust holds the intellectual property and it has to license, it has a contract with another trust. So, for example, maybe another trust is the beneficiary, and that trust has access through beneficial use of that intellectual property, for example.
Okay.
Okay, but that would, if you don't have an EIN, that probably means you're not doing banking, or you may be able to set up an institutional crypto or non-fiat currency way of maintaining those funds that doesn't require an EIN number.
Okay. Understood. All right. That's it.
Awesome. Great questions. Someone said in the Netherlands, the Dutch judicial system doesn't recognize the trust. Yeah, that's fine. Trusts are private. If it's a private trust and non-statutory, it doesn't have to be recognized by the judicial system. Okay. And I'm just saying that in general. I mean, obviously, wherever you are, you would want to study, you would want to look at the case law and the precedents in your region, which is probably quite extensive. I mean, I'm not sure where you got that information from. But the statutory side doesn't have any control over the non-statutory trust. It's completely different jurisdiction. So let's see what other people are asking. Yes, Anna Marie asked what documents for status correction. Yeah, when I did my status correction, it was like 14 different documents. The SBC is also a number of different documents, including obviously the trust that you set up, the private security agreement, hold harmless agreement, and so on and so forth. There's going to be quite extensive documentation. That's why I always recommend folks, and I say this almost every day, you just, be efficient with your time. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Hire someone to help you create the paperwork, then obviously read through it yourself because you're not going to hire an attorney to do it for you, and then do your own filing with the instructions that your provider has, whether it's Divine Trust Babies or Creditor Academy or SBC University or whoever you work with. There's a lot of companies out there that are doing it. But don't try to piece it all together yourself. You're going to spend a lot of time, and it's going to be 6 months later, and you're still going to be trying to put it all together when you could have just gotten your foundational paperwork all at once. And then whoever you're working with, they're going to tell you exactly which documents you're going to have. Okay. So, other questions? You guys are letting this percolate and churn. Go ahead, Todd.
So one more thing. Are you familiar with decanting a trust, where you actually like pour assets out of one trust into another via the trustee? Let's say you set up an irrevocable trust, and the trust doesn't meet the purpose, but you want to adjust things, but because it's irrevocable, you can't do anything with it.
I haven't heard it called decanting, but yes, in general, if the trust has the right provisions for the trustees, even though it's irrevocable, it doesn't back you into a corner where you can't, wind it down. In fact, the model that we use, Todd, and you're probably aware of this, even allows the trustees, I think it's unanimous vote of the trustees and the beneficiaries, they can wind down the trust even though it's irrevocable.
Okay, that's definitely a nice feature. All right, thank you.
Absolutely. You'll see that in the language of the if you've been using the model that we share or Creditor Academy, you're going to see that language right in the model. So great question. Let's see what other people are asking. No, you don't need a lodial title to have property in a trust. I'm not aware of anyone personally who has a lodial title. There are ways to convey property into a trust. It does usually involve, for example, a quick claim deed or a bill of sale or some other deed. So there does have to be supporting documentation, but it doesn't have to be a lodial title. Great question. I don't know anyone yet. Hey, Robert, did you have a question?
No, just saying hello. I'm hoping I'm on time.
You're fine, Robert. You're only an hour late, but that's okay.
Man, every time I get the emails, it screws me up, and I'm on Central Standard Time. I don't know. I don't get it.
I'm sorry about that, but I'm glad you're here. As they say, better late than never.
I was just gonna say that.
Awesome. Yeah, we try. It's hard, we have people all potentially. I mean, we have people in the Netherlands here, obviously. We've had people participate from other parts of the world. So, it's kind of international. So it's a little challenging. I try to make the time zones as clear as possible, but, maybe we can call out a couple of different time zones to make it a little easier. We'll see.
That was my own fault. I saw 3 and I thought it meant Central instead of Eastern.
Yeah, I get it. Awesome. Well, the world revolves around Central Time Zone, Robert.
Why not?
All right, I don't see any more new questions. If anybody wants to raise their hand or if anybody wants to share an experience, of anything they've done already, go ahead. We're still here for at least another 30 minutes.
David, just want to ask something regarding the schedule for the meetings, since we're still on that subject.
Sure.
So, for example, there is some of us which are in the European part, and there is a slight 7-hour difference between us. So basically, when the meetings occur at, for example, 7 Eastern time, that's about 2 o'clock in the morning for us. So not trying to imply anything. I'm just asking if it would be possible to make it just slightly earlier.
Yeah, so we'll probably still have those meetings at 7, but what we could do is intercalate the meetings and have them like alternating times. So send the message to support, just reminding me about that, and we'll look about if we can kind of make every other meeting at a different time.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You got it. Let's go back to Rick Z.
Yes, I was gonna mention when I was going through Divine Trust Babies stuff, there is a course on there talking about offsetting your bills and that as a private banker, which you can do before you do while you're working on the status correction and secured party creditor and that. Do you know anything about that?
Not about her specific process, because I haven't looked into it, but I know there's a couple of different ways to do it. I mean, there's the common law side, which is the notice of tender for set off. And then on the equity side, of course, it's called a non-negotiable notice of acceptance, and it's basically a banker's acceptance. So there are variations, but they're kind of variations of the same. So you're right. I mean, if you have debts on the Social Security attached to the Social Security person, and you want to be able to discharge them, there are a couple of different ways to do that.
Because I was just thinking that if somebody was like in a bind before they can get all this done, because this process takes a while, maybe they can look into that while they proceed further.
Sure. And what's the name of the specific program that she goes into that?
Something about discharge. Hold on once, maybe I got it here.
Is that a course that you've enrolled in or thinking of enrolling in?
Yeah, I just got it. I thought I would get it along with the status correction.
Okay.
And something about discharging or offsetting your public debts as a private banker or something like that. And then I did email her and I said, and she said, yeah, this is something you can do and take even your property taxes in something you can do while you're working on your status correction and secured party creditor.
Okay. So Rick, since you've enrolled in that, what I would love for you to do is just come back and let us know, like as you start taking action on that, just come back and let us know what you've discovered. I mean, if it's working, what you've been able to learn from that, because if it does have legs and you're getting good results, then we definitely want to share that so others may want to take advantage of that.
Yeah, it's I just thought I would bring it up if like you were talking about earlier, if somebody's in a bind and their back is against the wall, maybe something like that they could look into before while they're correcting their status and all that stuff. But I will go through it and I'll let you know what on the next webinar or whatever you call it.
Awesome. I appreciate that. I know you show up a lot, and I know you're taking a lot of action. So if you're willing to come back at some point and share, even in our private study sessions, what you learned, that I think that could be very valuable.
Yeah, I'll do that. That's all I have for now.
Okay, great. Let's go to Agnes.
Hey, David.
Hey, Agnes.
Hey. So since you're creating a trustee network, could you go into more detail as far as like what the role of the trustee within the trust is? And I'm specifically interested in a trust that would hold a bank account that has money going in and out every day to cover expenses and things like that. Who pays the bills? What is the trustee responsible for? How does that work logistically?
Great question. Great question, Agnes. So at a high level, the trustee's main job and really almost their exclusive job is to protect and preserve the assets of the trust for the benefit of the beneficiaries. Okay. Anything they need to do to properly execute that duty is going to fall under their purview. Now, trustees can delegate authority. Okay. And it depends, the degree to which they can delegate is sometimes controlled by the actual trust declaration of trust, which may limit or not limit. In the case of our declaration, they're not really limited. So for example, if it's a complex trust, or I should say, it's a trust that there's a lot going on and, and maybe the trustee is busy with a couple of different trusts, they may actually delegate managing the bank account to someone who's not a trustee, but that person would still report to the trustee. Or the trustee, if it's a very small trust, they may do all of that work themselves. So it really just depends.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it kind of does. I'm just wondering, like, you really have to, I guess, you really have to trust the trustee to handle everything and pay on time. Like, I'm thinking, like, I would not want to be late on my rent payments or utilities. And yeah, I'm specifically interested in how it works with the trustee with the kind of trust that would hold like daily transactions or daily activities, things moving in and out all the time, as opposed to like a trust that holds real estate and it just sits there, or a trust that holds a car and it just sits there. There is no there's nothing happening daily. So I'm specifically interested in like the banking and paying bills and things like that.
Okay, so there's two aspects to that. There's the ethical side and the operational side. So let's tackle them separately. So your first concern was I want to work with trustees who are trustworthy, right? So that's the ethical side. That's the education of the trustee. Maybe they've studied equity. Maybe if they work for a trust management company, there's perhaps been some background checks, some references, character checks, or maybe just, relationship based. Obviously, everything is built on trust. We can't control other people's behavior. So at some point, we have to trust that people are going to follow through on their commitments, but we can use certain checks and balances within a trust to protect the trust overall. So even if one trustee does go rogue, which hopefully will be very rare, we have a way to protect the integrity of the trust. So that just has to do with the ethical side. And obviously we want to train our trustees to study equity, to be regular students of this material, to really inculcate that mindset of what it means to be a fiduciary or to act in a fiduciary capacity. But that's not so much about the operational side. The operational side is just how busy they or anyone working in the trust will be with the day-to-day. And that's just like any business, right? So if the business has a lot of volume going through, either that trustee is going to be very busy or they're going to have the authority to delegate. But these are really two separate things.
Okay. Okay, I see. And do you have any specific strategies you're going to implement in your trustee network on how to pick them and how to check on them, on their work and stuff like that, like as far as responsibilities go? And
yeah, some of that's still being developed because it is a new network, but there's going to be a couple of different dimensions to that. We're going to obviously creating profiles based on skill sets and experience. And then, of course, the most important part is fit. So, for example, let's just think about, hiring people to work in an organization. A big part of it, sometimes people would say that the majority of it is fit. So is there a good synergy? Do we get a good feeling from this individual when we speak with them? Do they come across in a way, there's no red flags? or there's very few red flags. So that's just the art of hiring and, someone even in general. So we're going to be employing some of that. And then we're going to be offering our trustees ongoing education so they can keep leveling up. So it's not just going to be like you get one training and you're done. You're going to be trustees are going to be constantly exposed to new training and kind of ongoing meetings where they can continue to show up. And if they're challenged by something, that they're not sure what the right decision is, then they're going to have a network of mentorship where they can fall back and ask either myself or someone else in network for help.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure thing. Great questions. Let's go back to Todd.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm familiar with I've been in this for a little while now. And Divine Trust Babies is excellent. I've looked at her stuff. I actually enrolled in her master banking class.
Awesome.
So, everybody follows Patrick Divine, it seems, because he was a guru of all this. But her trusts don't go into quite the level of detail that yours do, the U-bots. And it may take a little while to set up the U-bots, but I think if anyone's serious about doing the private banking, offsetting, discharging, and working in that capacity and transferring assets from the estate to a living trust, and then, have the private bank in a foreign grantor trust, in my personal opinion, setting the extra time up, developing the U-bot is actually going to save you a lot of time in the long run. So that's my only takeaways from studying this for probably about 4 years now. Thanks.
Thanks, Todd. I agree with you. And last night I was reading through a manual called the Trust. I think it's called the Trust Business Manual or the Business Trust Manual. It's like a 100-page manual. And wow, I mean, even though I've been exposed to this already for a few months, I mean, every page was just packed full of knowledge. And you're absolutely right. The learning never stops. We want to be on the cutting edge of it. And I just enrolled in Julian's equity trust course as well. I think Divine has great materials. We don't necessarily have to learn from just one, so now I'm probably going to be learning from 2 or 3 different mentors plus the different books. So yeah, Todd, just out of curiosity, are you a member of the Trustee Network?
I am.
Okay, awesome. I thought so. Well, that's great. So yeah, I mean, what we want to cultivate in that network or in any network, and it's not exclusive. You can, as you pointed out, Todd, you could be in the Trustee Network and you also take someone else's trust course, just like I'm doing. So the learning never stops. And I think, to answer Agnes's question, another attribute of a great trustee is they have a constant desire to keep growing and learning. They're self-motivated, so they don't, they don't have to be just assigned tasks to keep leveling up, but they actually have an innate desire and curiosity, and they want to keep learning because they know that the more they expose themselves to this, the better they're going to be at their, as a trustee or even setting up and creating trusts.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that I've learned through my journey and all this is you have to keep learning and you have to keep studying, especially if you're involved with, the United States Treasury and the IRS, and all the laws that are here in the States. It's almost a requirement to constantly learn and constantly learn new things because, quite frankly, there's some excellent history if you go back and look the way the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and all those guys set up their, trust with the Constitution inside and the family unit. It's fascinating. So that's kind of the direction I'm moving in, with all the life insurance and having trust and a family constitution inside your trust. So everybody in your family unit is taken care of.
Amazing. Great stuff, Todd. I'm right there with you. I love it. And I'm just, every day I get up with, with enthusiasm to want to learn more. So that's great to hear. And there's a lot of power in this. So for those of you who are just getting started, I know it can seem a little overwhelming. That's why I recommend either join our trustee network, or if you want to work with another mentor, I don't have any kind of competitive stance here. Work with whomever resonates with you. I've taken Creditor Academy's business trust course. I just enrolled in Julian's equity trust system course. So, you know, we can keep learning. So great shares on that. I just reshared the link since we are getting close to the end of our time. I just shared the link again where you can get access to everything. You can get access to our high-level strategy, to our private communities on Telegram, Discord. You can see our different memberships. Whatever you need is going to be in that link. So go ahead and grab that link and bookmark it. UBOT stands for Unincorporated Business Organization Trusts. So like I was saying earlier, there's a couple different names for these. So don't let that trip you up. But essentially, they're all trusts that are private, non-statutory, common law trusts. Okay, and they're based specifically on case law and also on the if you read American jurisprudence, which is on my reading list, you're going to be able to go back and read the specific case law where this comes from. And that's why it's sometimes called a Massachusetts, for example, Massachusetts type, not because it's valid only in Massachusetts, but because that was, some of the original case law that helped develop that model happened in Massachusetts. Okay. So there's a lot of history there. So someone asked about the YouTube channel. I only have one YouTube channel. It was just rebranded. So anything that was on the old channel is on the new channel. Some older videos may have been set to private, but that's just because they don't really align well with our new strategy, which has been evolving, but the channel itself is the same. So that's a good question. Someone asked about, do you have to file UCC in your own country, state, or can you file? I'm not sure the answer to that. I would ask that whoever you work with to finish your SBC, I would ask them. Probably yes, but I'm not 100% sure of the mechanics of that. Awesome. You guys are asking really good questions. Let's go back to Agnes.
I just wanted to maybe perhaps answer Haley's question about the UCC in another country.
Sure.
When I was in my class studying UCC and correcting the status, we had students from all over the world, and every single person filed the UCC one online with the Washington division, no matter what country. So we had students from the UK, we had students from Canada, we had students from the US, and we all went to the same website, which is the Washington UCC main website.
Awesome. I did not know that. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Agnes. All right, let's see. I'm just seeing if there's any other questions that I may have missed. Antoinette, back to you.
Oh yeah, they have Washington and New York. They're the number 2.
Okay.
Yeah, and New York is very strong, especially in real estate. Florida, no, because Florida's not regulated. So that's why I didn't go to Florida, because it's not regulated. So I went to New York.
Amazing. Amazing.
Okay.
Okay. Well, what I want to do now, since we're winding down here, last 5-10 minutes, I'm going to give everybody a homework assignment. Are you guys cool with that? Okay. The homework assignment, you can complete it even if you don't sign up for any course or memberships. It doesn't require that. I mean, if you end up doing that, that's great. We'd love to have folks in our memberships. But here's your homework assignment. Go to the link I shared a couple of times that says beacons.ai/the Freedom Studio. Just go to that link and download the high-level strategy, read through it, and then, or even if you have read through it, maybe read through it again. And then what I want you to do is I want you to take it and create your own high-level strategy or own comprehensive strategy and goals for yourself, for your family, and for your businesses or whatever your commercial endeavors are. Okay, so in other words, take it and create your own version. Map it out in a document. In other words, put it into writing, because the act of writing it down will clarify things for you, will help you clarify for yourself and refine it. And then it becomes a living document that you can update over time. and it keeps you on point so you don't get lost in the weeds because you always know what your overall direction is. Okay, so that's the homework assignment. And for those of you who love a bonus assignment, to take it to the next level, what you would do after that is after you've defined your high level objectives, and I recommend, thinking ahead a reasonable time. So for example, you can ask yourself, what do I want to accomplish by the end of this year? So set yourself a time limit, because to get things done, we need to bind them in time. Otherwise, it's just completely open-ended, right? Projects don't get done if there isn't a time limit, a deadline. Okay, so give yourself a deadline. A year is a great target because you can get a lot done in a year. If you want to do a shorter time, 3 to 6 months, that's also fine. Okay, so give yourself a 3-6 year target. You can even think bigger if you want to think bigger. And then I want you to, if you want to do the bonus, start to reverse engineer that and come up with more specific things that you can start working on right now to move you forward. And that's really important, because when I see people getting overwhelmed with all of this, first of all, I know they don't have a strategy. They're getting lost in the weeds. And then even when they do have a strategy, they may not have, like, what are the specific next steps that I need to take? Okay. So instead of getting lost in the weeds, you can now have your high level strategy. Okay. And then you will know what you need to do next. So for example, if your strategy is pretty aligned with what we're doing, you're going to know you're going to want to correct your status and become a secured party creditor, secured party / creditor. So you're going to know that you're going to want to work with someone to help you do that. And then they're going to be able to answer all your specific detail-oriented questions about that process. So you don't have to get overwhelmed, like, how many documents, how do I file this and that? So, no, I know I need to get that done. So my first step is, who do I want to work with to help me create that paperwork? And then I'm going to ask them all the specific questions, like Haley's question, like, how important is this? How important is that? What is the role of this document? Because now I'm working with a specific mentor or organization, and they're going to be able to answer all my specific questions. And then I'm not getting stuck. Okay. So that's your homework assignment. So read the high level strategy, come up with your own. It doesn't have to be a clone of what we came up with. It can be your own. Make it relevant to, for example, 3-6 months a year, and then start to reverse engineer it and keep track of everything. Document everything. Document your strategy and document your specific activities. I personally like to use ClickUp. That's the app that I love to use to track everything. It's free to start. But you don't have to. You could just do a spreadsheet or whatever you like to use. It's not the only game in town. But obviously it's better to have everything written down than just have it in your head. When I talk to people on consultations and they're overwhelmed, I can tell immediately they haven't put anything down in paper. You haven't written anything down. Okay. So is everybody clear about that homework assignment, or any questions about that? Haley says yes. Notion. Yep. There's a lot of great platforms. Notion's a cool platform as well. Couple of really good platforms out there. All right. So we're going to be wrapping up. Carrie leaving a nice thank you. Appreciate you, Carrie. Appreciate everybody who's shown up here. You guys are amazing. We are in this together. So we're going to wrap up here, but I don't know if anybody has any parting words that they want to share. I just want to thank everybody for spending some time with me today.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you guys. All right. We'll see you guys soon. Take care, everyone.